So President Biden says today he and the GOP are making, quote, good faith effort, end quote, to seek an infrastructure compromise. No numbers, apparently, and no deals, but a good faith effort. So joining us now to talk about that and a couple other things, our great friend, Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty. Senator Hagerty, welcome on, as always, sir. You know, Senator, I want to ask you about infrastructure in a second, but I want to ask you something else. This whole colonial pipeline business, which I think, by the way, affects Tennessee also, if I'm not mistaken.
It does.
But
it does.
In any case, Bill, what is your view about paying the ransom? What's your sense of that?
You know, it sets a terrible precedent, Larry. It's always been our American policy not to pay terrorists, and that's exactly what's happening in this case. You noticed in President Biden's speech today, where he took credit for Operation Warp Speed and didn't give any credit to President Trump, as you rightly called out. What he did was provide a typical old-fashioned Washington smokescreen, a distraction, because he didn't talk about the Keystone. He didn't talk about the colonial pipeline and the hack there from Russia. He didn't talk about the fact that we've got inflation. He didn't talk about the border crisis that we're dealing with right now. He didn't talk about bad jobs numbers and unemployment. They're trying to distract us from what the real issues are. I'm glad that we're going to be taking masks off, but it's interesting what he didn't say today, as you noted earlier.
You know what else he didn't say, Senator, is the Middle East is falling apart. And his policy of catering to Iran is falling apart. And by the way, to quote General Keane, and a view that I've had, I'm a Keane student, if you will, Russia doesn't get a free pass. They don't get a free pass with the pipeline, because those are Russian hackers, and they don't get a free pass with Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah bombing Israel either.
Indeed, and this whole policy shift of the Biden administration, we had 4 months in office. We had countries that were moving in the right direction toward the Abraham Accords, and the momentum that had already been created by President Trump and his administration with the Abraham Accords, we could have capitalized on that. Instead, Biden moves to a policy of appeasement with Iran. It emboldens Iran, and it fuels this type of terrorism. My team just told me today there are about 2,000 rockets that have been launched from Gaza into Israel. All of those rockets are from one country, Iran.
Yeah, and Iran's client, Iran's financier, Iran's backer is Russia.
Russia.
You got it. Well, good for you, Senator Hagerty. I think you're the only guy to piece this together. So, Bill, let me ask you, what's the scuttlebutt in the Republican conference about the meeting today on infrastructure?
Look, we've got some real infrastructure needs. You just look at my home state, Larry. There's Interstate 40, a bridge that connects Arkansas to Tennessee. That bridge cracked this week. It's made a huge problem in terms of road traffic, but even bigger problem in terms of the waterway. That's the Mississippi River. It's a superhighway of Middle America. And we have over 740 barges that are sidelined right now. There's fuel, there's all kinds of commodities that need to move up and down that river that are being blocked right now because of this infrastructure failure. So it underscores the fact that America does need and can make real hard infrastructure investment. The problem is that the Biden bill has maybe 10% of what you and I would call real infrastructure. I'm talking there roadways, bridges, waterways, even broadband. Everything else has nothing to do with what you and I would consider infrastructure in a traditional sense. So there's a huge yawning gap to close, and I appreciate Senators Capito, Senator Wicker, their leadership trying to address this. I'll tell you, I'm not optimistic, though, Larry. I'm not optimistic about it.
Well, the bid and the offer, Senator, is so wide. I mean, on spending, I don't know, it's about $2.5 trillion to maybe 700 or 800 billion, and on taxes, it's about 2.5 or 3 trillion to nothing. I mean, we've never used income taxes to finance transportation before. We've used, you know, toll roads and user fees and bonding and so forth. We've never used income taxes on companies or individuals or capital gains.
Just as you say, there's bonding capacity. There are billions of dollars of private capital on the sidelines that could be brought in. But to turn around and undo the great success of the 2017 Tax Act that President Trump passed, the great blue-collar jobs, recovery that you and President Trump helped orchestrate, to turn around and take that apart, to raise taxes on job creators and workers, is exactly the wrong policy.
Kevin McCarthy, the House leader, just one more. He told this show yesterday after their meeting, the Four Corners met with Biden, that stopping and reversing the 2017 tax cuts is not on the table. It's not negotiable.
Leader McConnell said the same thing. That's his red line. And I agree with him. The last thing we need to be doing, Larry, as we come out of a recovery, as we come out of this recession and recover, is to turn around and create all the wrong incentives for our economy. And taking apart the 2017 Tax Act is going to move our economy in exactly the wrong direction. Again, we've got inflation. We're dealing with bad jobs numbers and unemployment. We need to be very careful right now and not put in jeopardy our recovery by tampering with the 2017 tax law.
All right. Senator Bill Hagerty, Tennessee. Thank you, sir. As always, thank you for your time and your wisdom. All right, folks, coming up next, we're going to revisit the colonial